Abeer, do you want to kind of start over and kind of reiterate a little bit of what you were saying and go more in depth with that about how like rare this is and how cool this is? Really, that South Asian women we're doing great things.
Yeah, so Sara and I are both, our institutions are part of the Big Ten, so that's, I mean, it's technically a football conference, but it unites all of our schools quite a bit up here, and all our schools are based out of the northern United States. Some are on the East Coast, but generally it puts us in the north. And so our institutions, and Sara, you can speak on this too, our institutions are predominantly white institutions, which is, you know, we have our experiences with diversity, but also in the positions of running for student body president this year, and I confirmed this with the Big Ten presidents. We all talked to each other in a little group me. The Big Ten has 2 student body presidents of color, and neither of them are women. Last year there was one she was at Rutgers, Christine, and she is unfortunate. You know, she's out, and so someone else came in. And then we discovered, perchance, that between myself, Sara, and Lima Nasrati over at University of Nebraska-Lincoln, we are 3 South Asian women running for president at our Big Ten schools, which is just kind of like, I don't think that's even happened in terms of running, let alone winning, so it's super cool.
I think it's really great, and I think for the benefit of Abeer and I, like, we've had really good even role models, whether or not they're like right in front of us or on the other side of the states, right, to look up to. And I think part of running as a female and as a brown girl, right, is really interesting because you have a lot. I think, in my opinion, we have a different perspective to add, and so sometimes it's easy to pick up on like nuanced topics and issues, especially when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, but also when we're talking about things like affordability.
So I know you both are currently still in the process of running. Your elections have not occurred yet. Given that you mentioned that, Sara, too, what have you guys incorporated diversity, or I guess just any part of being a brown girl and being South Asian into your platforms in trying, you know, to spread your campaign?
Yeah, of course. So a big part of our platform is creating this inclusive Hoosier experience. So anybody that comes to IU is going to feel included. They're going to feel like everything for them is accessible and equitable, and that they're being included not only in the classroom but also in like the student organizations and campus as a whole. And so I think being able to say, like, I'm from a different background, I can bring these perspectives, but I also understand it as simply being a college student that's going to school here. I think it's really cool when we talk about diversity and inclusion and when we get other people to rally around that, whether it's having more training and peer-to-peer education or just talking about issues on campus and bringing them to the attention of the university administration.
Yeah, so diversity and inclusion, of course, is in our platform, and historically in student government. So I'm currently the student body vice president at the University of Minnesota, and historically, diversity and inclusion has kind of been the thing that I do. Like, it's kind of the thing that I've been somewhat known for. But I think specifically as a South Asian woman and as a brown girl, there's just this, when we talk about representation, I've just learned over time, always and consistently I'm reminded how important it is because of the things that I, in my own privileges, can forget about, and in the same way, the amount of things that I have to remind someone about in a given room. You know, just a funny example today was our student government advisor was in, and I was talking to her about how I haven't had time to cook at all because I've been so busy with the campaign and also doing my job. And I have a bunch of root vegetables that I've been getting. This is a very weird story, but I have a bunch of root vegetables that have been sitting around that I haven't done anything with. And I said something like, oh, I need to make a curry. Like, I'll ask my mom because she cooks these types of things and they're really quick and easy, and I can keep it in the fridge and make some rice, make some chawal, and keep it in the fridge, and I can deal with it later. And she was like, yeah, you can go get some naan at Trader Joe's. And I, like, lost it because it was such a critical example of how my relationship to something is just clearly very different in this room than the rest of the people. But in terms of what I'm doing, my ability, I think, to understand a variety of experiences are really shaped by being a brown girl, whether that's understanding women, specifically obviously cis women, but women, being able to understand women of color, people of color, immigrants, international students too, maybe not in the same way that they're experiencing it, but having been someone who has such a global background, understanding what it means to come and be culture shocked, among a variety of other things, they've really shaped my empathy, and I think the types of things we advocate for, and that's reflective in our platform and also the things that we want to do.
Definitely, definitely. And have either of you, what has been the response that you guys have seen from your university communities in running for these positions? Has it been good? Has it been bad? Normal?
As it might be apparent, I don't always get noticed for that, right? So like sometimes it comes up in like when we're talking about mental health stigma, I say like, oh well, my parents are Indian, and like in their society and cultures, and even like the immigrants that have come here, like we don't talk about mental health. We just don't do it, and that's horrible. But like I don't think people always realize what angle you're coming from just from your appearance.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, I put my South Asianness out there quite a bit. I think probably because I think South Asian people and I think South Asian women, like we really get placed into this model minority myth a lot. And I've noticed that come out last year when I first ran as vice president, that for whatever reason I felt like right now the screen looks, I don't know, the screen looks interesting, but I don't present as white. There's no one who's ever mistaken me for white. I always get asked, where are you from? Are you Indian? Get that all the time. So I obviously don't pass. Like people think I'm whatever. But for some reason I was almost frustrated that it wasn't being brought up in my conversations. Like I was recognized in being part of a Do a Woman ticket, but not enough really at all really recognized for being South Asian, both from my community and also the community that generally talks about these types of things. And I think part of it is internal biases that, well, South Asians and Indians and this population in general, they get into these positions. And it's like, yes, Indians, maybe in the South Asians in general, in the picture of Asians, we have our privileges. We absolutely do, and I don't deny that. But South Asian women in politics, like, who is it? Nikki Haley in South Carolina and Miss Kamala Harris over in California, who's half Indian and also half black, and she often gets recognized for her half blackness, which I'm sure Rini can talk to. Women and brown girls aren't in these positions, and I really do want to see more recognition of the fact that I am not someone who historically has access to these places, and Sara is, and a lot of us are, even if people want to place that stereotype on us. But running, we've gotten great work about being women and about being women of color in general. It's just I wish the South Asian part was recognized a little more.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. So just to clarify what you said, you feel like it's not brought up, and I understood that because with Nikki Haley, I did not know even she was South Asian until I literally looked her up and was like, oh my God, that's not your name, and then I was like, wait, what? So it isn't. And how would you encourage? I guess you kind of mentioned this a little bit that you're open about your South Asianness, you speak it up. But why do you think we refrain from that? Why do you think we have like our Nikki Haleys and what was the guys, the Bobby Jindals? Like,
I think part of it is that everybody has this image of like the ideal candidate, and then when we get to wanting to assimilate, right? If you want to win, you kind of have to choose like what do you want to talk about or what's important to the people that are paying attention to you and who you want to pay attention to. And I think in my case, like I just never talk about it, and maybe it's something that I should talk about more. But for some reason, like I haven't had the same experience of feeling like the need to talk about it, because I think instead I focus on like showing what I'm doing instead of like my makeup or like my appearance, like like who I am, like genetically or ethnically. And that's not because I don't like it, it's just because it doesn't come up here, honestly. Like for like to be a brown girl, I guess might be different from being a different ethnicity and being a person of color, just because that gets a lot more attention. But if you look like me, and this is horrible, but like if you look like me, people don't even know, and some people don't believe me when I tell them my ethnicity.
like sometimes my South Asianness often comes around the conversations that we have that, like you mentioned mental health. Mental health is the biggest initiative that our student government did this year, and we put out a video that went viral on our campus. And I think, you guys probably saw it. And in those moments, those were these great opportunities for me to be like, like growing up, this is my experience with mental health is not the same as maybe folks who are American and white and, you know, all these other populations and native English speakers. And I really do sometimes think that it's because we aren't really expected to be, like, brown girls aren't breaking barriers because brown women are everywhere. Like, that's the assumption, and it's not true, but because we get boxed into these people who are significantly wealthier, sometimes even wealthier than white people, or like we are more educated than white people, and there's reasons for that. There are statistical reasons that is the way that it is. We're just like, oh, like they're not. This isn't interesting, and that's not to say that, like, you know, when black women and Latina women and indigenous women like rock, like they absolutely totally rock and they deserve all that recognition. But I'd love to see Asian women and South Asian women and Desi women taking more ownership of that. It's like, we do have a story, and mine is unique and Sara's is unique and Rini's is unique. Like, we have something that we've learned because of these identities that make us unique in these positions, and that's not something to brush off. So I really like to put it out there as much as possible, because it is who I am, and how I represent is based on who I am, so I think it's important.
No, absolutely. And I mean, again, I mentioned this before, but I'm so proud of you three for, you know, for you guys doing what you're doing, because you don't see a lot of brown people in these positions, and when you see them, they've whiteified their name, for lack of a better term. So you guys are doing great work, and I'm so excited to see what you guys will do. And now we know Rini has already, she's currently the president of USC's student body president, and she has been doing great work along with her other accomplishments. So now I just want to open up the floor between the three of you, especially Sara and Abeer, for you guys to ask Rini any questions you have, get feedback. You know, we're on the cusp of your elections, and good luck to both of you. But yeah, y'all take it away.